The Firm, India's only show on corporate law, tax and audit matters.
Hello and welcome to The Firm. On the show this week, are the days of free WhatsApp, free Viber, free Skype about to come to an end? The telecom regulator has sparked a fiery debate on net neutrality. And how fair and lovely is India's new model bilateral investment treaty? Well, are the days of free WhatsApp, free Viber, free Skype about to come to an end in India? Will your telecom company decide what you can access? Will it charge you more for some apps and less for others? This month, TRAI, the telecom regulator, sparked a fiery debate on internet access and net neutrality. Ayush Elavadi visits the battleground.
Instead of using normal calls, I just use Viber calls because they are free and they are very helpful and useful.
I like to use Ike because there are many more stickers in it. But if those guys are going to charge me for using that app, then I won't use it only.
I like WhatsApp because it's free. I would never pay for it.
I use Skype to talk to my brother. If they start charging me for Skype, then how will I talk to my brother?
Around the world, the number of messages transmitted by OTTs like WhatsApp or Viber is over twice the global SMS traffic. Even Skype carried 214 billion minutes of international Skype-to-Skype calls. That's almost 40% of the size of the global telecom market. This is what's disrupting the telecom business model. Telecom companies say that they pay license fees, they pay revenue share and are regulated. And that OTTs enjoy a free ride, little regulation, pay no license fees or revenue share.
A few months ago, Airtel decided to charge standard call rates for calls made via Skype or WhatsApp or similar such platforms. But consumer opposition forced it to withdraw. Airtel hasn't given up the fight, nor have other telecom players. Luckily for them, TRAI has re-sparked the debate by issuing a discussion paper that raises several questions about the operations, regulation and revenue impact of over-the-top services. The key ones are regulation and licensing of over-the-top services such as WhatsApp and Skype, how to apply prevailing laws to OTTs to address security, consumer protection and other such concerns. Should OTTs and apps pay for using telecom networks? And can telecom networks implement non-price discrimination measures?
Thankfully, TRAI hasn't provided the answers to its questions, but the way that it has set up the questions leaves me very worried because the TRAI paper, rather than asking whether we need the principle of net neutrality, which is, after all, the basis of a free and open internet, is asking the question of whether we need to regulate the internet even more, whether we need to regulate OTT players such as YouTube and WhatsApp and every other internet website out there. So that's a very scary proposition.
TRAI claims that OTTs are unlicensed and unregulated, and telecom companies demand regulatory neutrality.
For example, we pay license fees, we pay for quality of standards, we pay for unwanted calls not coming through and being filtered, we pay for legal enforcement overhead and cost for de-encryption, encryption. All of those are on us. We are a collection agency for the government insofar as we have to collect sales tax on every rupee of sales. None of those burdens fall on those folks who are providing the similar type of services.
It's true, there is a difference in the regulation between a Viber and a WhatsApp on the one hand and an Airtel and a Vodafone on the other hand. But the answer to that isn't to increase the regulatory burden on these companies. The answer is to actually decrease the regulatory burden on telecoms.
Imagine disclosing the scope of your activity and business before even rolling out an online business to the telecom regulator and then being limited by it. It will increase costs, it will delay rollouts, and it will tremendously impact innovation in the technology industry, which is relying on an absence of such high bureaucratic thresholds, in fact, to innovate by itself. I think this is not in the best interest of either the technology companies or the telecom companies, given that even telecom companies are making increased amount of revenues as well as profit on the basis that there is more data consumption and demand being driven by users.
Interestingly, TRAI also seems to suggest that OTTs and applications live in a lawless land, raising concerns regarding security, consumer protection and the like.
It's incorrect in as much to state that internet platforms and content services are exempt from any kind of regulation per se. Now the IT Act applies to them. Copyright, intellectual property applies to them. If they are also, engaging in e-commerce and they have a base in India, indirect as well as direct taxation things apply to them. General laws apply to them. Law of contract applies to them. Shops and Establishment Act, the labor law legislation, everything does apply to them. So I don't think so these arguments are that well grounded in law.
India has no shortage of laws. Besides, protecting a buyer of electronic goods on an e-commerce site is hardly TRAI's problem. So far, the arguments against TRAI's inquiries are easily won. But now comes the most contentious part. Should OTTs pay for using telecom networks? And besides fees, can telecom networks implement other discrimination measures? At the heart of this debate lies the concept of net neutrality.
Net neutrality means telecom operators and governments must treat all internet traffic on an equal basis. Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web, is a firm advocate of net neutrality. He said, "It's essential to an open, fair democracy. The alternative is a web in which governments or large companies, or frequently a close association of the two, try to control the internet with packets of information delivered in a way that discriminates for commercial or political reasons." TRAI has sparked a fiery debate by suggesting that telecom service providers should charge OTT players an extra fee or be compensated for the lost revenue. But don't telecom companies already charge for data usage? They may earn less, but by no means are consumers using WhatsApp or Facebook or Twitter for free.
If you look at any of the global metrics and standards, you will find that the data demand goes up exponentially, but unfortunately the revenue that comes from data services comes down fairly steeply, and we have this gap between the customer's demands for speed, for coverage, and for various applications going up tremendously, and unfortunately our operators don't have the investment to keep up with that demand in terms of providing the bandwidth and the networks. So I think it's in all of our interests, including the customers, to ensure that that gap is close to the point that we can meet the customer's demand for increasing speeds, increasing bandwidth, and ubiquitous coverage.
Even if there actually was a fall in revenue, which we haven't really seen, but even if that was the case, that doesn't give rise to a situation where TRAI should step in and regulate the market. To give an analogy that Mahesh Murthy used recently, it would be like saying an electricity company is losing money because of energy efficient light bulbs, and is now saying that energy efficient light bulbs must be regulated to prevent any losses to the electricity company.
Charging an additional fee is one way that a telecom company could influence what applications consumers use. Now imagine if your telecom company struck a deal with Flipkart so that you can shop on its app at a lower data usage cost than you would pay to shop using the Snapdeal app. That's what Airtel has done by launching Airtel Zero.
What has Airtel done? Airtel is in a sense that on a non-discriminatory basis, on a very transparent basis, any application person who has developed an application is free to put that on their network, and any user who wants to test it and not pay for it just because he wants to kind of get used to it without getting sticker shock, is free to do so. What's not to like from the consumer perspective?
My thoughts on Airtel Zero, any zero rating service, and these are my purely my personal opinion, is that there is an anti-competitive effect. And how do we deal with it? We can deal with it with a very with a very harsh form of network neutrality where we prohibit it completely. There are also other measures we can adopt whereby any such private deal which is reached between a content platform and, for instance, a telecom major is publicized, is public, and on the same terms other players can sign on board with Airtel.
Telecom companies can also influence the use of applications and OTT services by offering a speedier access to some and a long buffering ride to others. But does net neutrality mean that everything and everyone online is treated equally?
We can't treat all packets that travel over a pipe, okay, over the internet equally, because voice over IP or any other form of real-time communication means that the packets need higher priority. So you don't want, for instance, your regular web browsing to slow down your Skype call, right? So you want to ensure that during the Skype call there is not much lag. So they need to be given a higher priority. And we need to ensure that net neutrality regulation doesn't go so far as to prevent this simple kind of quality of service management.
The battle for internet freedom is about ensuring that ISPs or telecom service providers don't become gatekeepers of the internet, discriminating between users, invading their privacy, curtailing their freedom of speech, and infringing on a basic human right. Let's hope the minister means what he says. In Mumbai, Ayush Elavadi.
Well, last year, the European Parliament voted to enshrine net neutrality in their law. But the European Council and European Commission are still opposing certain provisions. In the US last month, the FCC, the regulator there, approved a rule that reclassifies consumer broadband as a utility and voted to approve strong net neutrality rules. So let's hope that TRAI also decides in favor of a free and equally accessible internet. On that note, let's take a quick break. Coming up next on The Firm, how fair and lovely is India's new model bilateral investment treaty?